Welcome to the nodding hour. Find a comfortable position, let your eyes grow heavy, and allow these quiet stories to carry you gently off to sleep. The lane that leads to the inn is narrow and unpaved for its last quarter mile. The gravel surface soft from the rain that has been falling since early afternoon, and shows no intention of stopping before morning. The headlights of the car illuminate the lane ahead in a cone of wet light, the gravel glistening, the hedges on either side dark and close, their wet leaves pressing against the edges of the lane, and occasionally brushing the car with a sound like a soft exhalation. The wipers move at their steady interval across the windscreen, clearing the view, and then letting it blur again, clearing and blurring. A slow rhythm that has been going on for the better part of an hour. The inn appears at the end of the lane without warning, which is the way it always appears for those who come here for the first time. A low stone building set back slightly from a small turning area, its windows lit from within, the light from them warm and yellow and entirely welcoming, in contrast to the dark and the rain and the long drive through the wet countryside that preceded it. A hanging sign above the door moves slightly in the wind. The gravel of the turning area is wet and dark beneath the tires as the car comes to a stop. The engine goes off. The wipers stop. The rain on the roof of the car is immediately more present, without the engine noise beneath it. A soft and continuous percussion on the metal above. The sound of a lot of rain falling on a small surface. Sitting for a moment before getting out, looking at the lit windows of the inn, at the warm rectangles of light that the windows make in the dark stone face of the building. Someone is in there. The fire is in there. The evening is in there, waiting. The door of the car opens, and the rain is immediate. On the face and hands, cold and fine. Not the heavy rain of a storm, but the persistent fine rain of a long wet evening that has been going on for hours, and has thoroughly saturated everything it has reached. The bag from the back seat. The car locked with a soft sound. The dash from the car to the inn door is short, but sufficient for the rain to make itself fully known. And by the time the door of the inn opens, the face is wet, and the shoulders of the coat are dark with it, inside. The door closes behind you with a sound that is immediately and completely the right sound, solid and warm and final. The sound of outside becoming outside, and inside becoming inside. The hallway of the inn is narrow and low-ceilinged, its walls paneled in dark wood that has been here for a very long time, and has absorbed the warmth and the lamplight of many evenings into its grain. A lamp on a small table to the right throws a circle of warm light onto the flagstone floor. The smell of the inn is immediate, wood smoke and something cooking somewhere, something warm and slow. And beneath both of those, the particular smell of an old building that has been inhabited continuously for a long time. A smell that is not quite any one thing, but is entirely and specifically itself. The proprietor appears from a doorway at the end of the hall. She is a woman of middle age with an unhurried manner and the particular ease of someone entirely comfortable in the space they occupy. Someone for whom this hall and this inn and this kind of rainy evening arrival is entirely familiar. She greets you without fuss, your name, your room, the key on a large wooden fob that she places in your hand with a brief description of where the room is, and where the dining room is, and what time breakfast is served, all of it delivered in a tone that is warm without being performative, helpful without being intrusive. Then she disappears back through the doorway from which she came, leaving you in the hall with the key and the lamp, and the smell of wood smoke and the sound of the rain continuing outside the door behind you. The stairs are narrow and creak on every other step, which is not unpleasant. Just the sound of an old building doing what old buildings do, registering your presence with the mild interest of something that has registered many presences over many years, and is not particularly surprised by any of them. The landing at the top is slightly uneven, the floorboards having settled over time into a gentle topography of their own. The door to the room is the third on the right, its number indicated by a small brass figure on the door that is slightly tarnished and entirely charming. The room is small and low-ceilinged, and entirely sufficient, A bed against the far wall with a white cover and more pillows than are strictly necessary, which is exactly right. A window to the left, its curtains not yet drawn, the rain visible on the glass and the lamplight from outside. A small fireplace on the right wall in which a fire has been lit. Not a large fire, just a modest one. A fire sized appropriately for a room of this size. 2 or 3 logs arranged on a bed of coals that are already well established. The flames above them small and steady and very welcome. A chair beside the fireplace angled toward both the fire and the window, with a small table beside it holding a lamp that is already on, its shade slightly worn at the edges, its light warm and entirely adequate. A wardrobe, a small bathroom. Through a door in the corner, its light off. The coat goes on the hook behind the door. The bag on the luggage stand at the foot of the bed, shoes off. The chair beside the fire receives you with the same unhurried accommodation that the best chairs always offer, giving way at the right places, holding firm at the right places, asking nothing. The fire is small but present. Its warmth reaches across the small room with complete efficiency, there being nothing in the room too far away for it to reach. The logs are dry and burning cleanly. The flames above the coals steady and without drama. The occasional small crackle the only sound they make beyond their general warmth and light. The coal bed, beneath them, glows orange and red, pulsing very slightly with the invisible breath of the fire, brightening and dimming in a slow alternation that is deeply restful to observe. The window. The curtains remain undrawn for now. The rain is visible on the glass, running down in lines, catching the light from the lamp outside, each line its own small river, from the top of the pane to the sill. Beyond the glass, the garden of the inn is just visible in the outdoor lamplight. A low wall, a path, the dark shapes of shrubs, everything wet and still, and entirely indifferent to the rain, having long since made its peace with it for the evening. A tray on the small table beside the chair holds a small pot of tea. Still warm, a cup and saucer, a small jug of milk. Someone brought this up before you arrived, and it is exactly what is needed, and you did not have to ask for it. The tea is poured slowly, the pot heavy and warm in the hand, the tea dark and fragrant, the milk added in a small careful pour, the color changing from dark to the particular warm brown of tea made correctly. In a warm room on a rainy evening, the first sip is very good. The warmth of it settles immediately and completely. The fire burns its small, steady fire. The rain runs its lines down the window glass. The lamp on the table makes its warm circle. The room is entirely still and entirely sufficient, sealed against the rain and the dark and the long drive, and everything that preceded this chair and this fire and this small warm room, at the end of a wet country lane, at the end of a long evening. Nothing is required. The fire will burn. The rain will continue. The inn will hold its warmth around you, as it has held warmth around every person who has sat in a chair beside a fire, in a small room, on a rainy evening, in all the years it has been doing exactly this. The tea cools in stages, first to the temperature at which it is perfect, then to the temperature at which it is still good, then to the temperature at which it is acceptable, and the cup is finished before it reaches any temperature beyond that. The teapot sits on the tray with enough left in it for another cup, which is poured slowly and held in both hands, and sipped in the same unhurried way as the first. The fire has shifted slightly while the tea was being attended to. One of the logs having settled deeper into the coal bed, the configuration changed, the flames finding new paths across the new surfaces. The room is exactly as warm as it was. The light is exactly as warm and dim. Nothing has changed in any essential way, and yet everything has rearranged slightly, which is what fires do, which is what evenings do, which is what this particular inn does on rainy nights. It continues, it adjusts, it remains entirely and consistently itself. The rain on the window has found its rhythm, not varying now, not gusting, just a steady and even presence on the glass, each line of water running its course from top to bottom and being replaced by another. the surface of the glass always wet, always running, always making its soft and consistent sound. The sound of it is very close to the sound of the fire, which is very close to the sound of silence, all three of them occupying the same quiet frequency, layering over one another into something that is deeply and specifically restful. The second cup of tea is finished. The tray sits on the table with its empty cups and its small spent teapot. The lamp makes its warm circle. The fire breathes its slow breath. The rain continues. The room is warm and dim and quiet, and the chair holds you, and the inn holds the chair, and the wet countryside holds the inn, and the night holds all of it patiently until morning. The eyes are heavy, not fighting it, just registering it, the way the body registers things honestly at the end of a long evening in a warm room after a long drive through wet countryside. The eyelids are heavy and the fire is warm, and the rain is steady, and the chair is holding you, and there is nowhere to go, and nothing to do, and the evening has done what evenings do, which is to arrive and to progress, and to bring everything eventually to this. To a chair by a fire in a small warm room, in an old inn at the end of a rainy lane in a quiet valley, at the end of a long day, at the beginning of a long and restful night. The fire settles into its lower register. The lamp holds its light. The rain holds its sound. The room holds its warmth. The inn holds the room. The night holds the inn, and everything is still and warm and quiet and entirely sufficient, and there is nothing left to do but let the heaviness of the eyes have what it is asking for, which is rest, which is sleep, which is the long and dark and peaceful. Nothing of a night well ended in a warm room, while rain falls outside on the garden and the lane and the wet countryside and everything rests. The curtains are drawn eventually, standing and crossing the small room to the window, pulling the fabric across the glass slowly, the rings moving along the rail with a soft metallic sound, the window disappearing behind the curtain, the rain still audible but now invisible, present as sound rather than sight, which changes the quality of it somehow, makes it more ambient, more general, less specific to this window and this pane of glass, and more simply the sound of rain, of a wet night, of a countryside receiving its weather with complete equanimity. Back in the chair. The room is more enclosed now with the curtains drawn, more interior. The walls closer in the lamp's light. The fire more dominant. The small space of the room more fully itself. The ceiling above is low and plain, its plaster slightly yellowed with age. A single pendant light in the center that is not on. The lamp on the small table providing all the light that is needed, and more than enough. The fire. The fire is lower now than it was when you arrived. The logs more consumed, the flames smaller. The coals beneath them redder, and more present than the flames above them. The heat it gives is still sufficient, still filling the small room without effort, the kind of heat that has moved from the active phase of a new fire into the steady and reliable phase of a fire that has found its level and will maintain it for some time, yet before it begins its final diminishment. The sounds of the inn at this hour. Somewhere above, very faintly, the sound of water moving through a pipe in the wall. A brief rushing sound that suggests someone in another room running a tap or flushing. A brief domestic intrusion into the quiet of the building that is gone as quickly as it came, absorbed back into the general quiet of the inn at night. Then nothing. Then the faint creak of a floorboard in the corridor outside. Someone passing, going to the bathroom, or going downstairs for something. Their footsteps muffled by the carpet runner in the corridor. Then nothing again. The inn settling into its deepest quiet. The guests all in their rooms now, all at whatever stage of the evening they are at. Some already asleep, some reading, some lying in the dark, waiting for sleep to arrive. All of them separately and privately, having their own quiet end, to their own day in their own small rooms. The building holding all of them in its old stone walls, warm and solid and entirely adequate to the task, as it has been adequate to this task on every other rainy evening of its existence, which is a very great number of rainy evenings. The fire breathes, the rain falls, the lamp burns. The room is warm. The body in the chair has made its final adjustments without any direction from anywhere, sinking slightly deeper into the cushion, the spine settling, the shoulders dropping their last small distance, the hands open and still in the lap, the face relaxed into whatever it becomes when nothing is required of it. The weight of the day is entirely gone. Not just the drive and the rain and the arrival, but everything before that. All of it deposited somewhere between the door of the car and this chair and this fire and this quiet, left outside with the rain, dissolved into the smell of wood smoke and old building and warm room that fills every breath taken here. The fire is mostly coals now. The last of the logs has burned through to its core. Just a dark outer shell around the orange interior, still giving heat, still doing its work, but quietly now, without any of the drama of new wood catching and burning. The light from the grate is steady and low and orange, the most constant light in the room now that the flames have settled, a patient and reliable glow. The lamp on the small table. Its shade is slightly faded at the edges, where the heat of the bulb has reached the fabric, over many years of evenings exactly like this one. Its light is warm and slightly orange, and makes a circle that covers the chair and the table, and very little else. The rest of the room in a comfortable dimness. The wardrobe is in the dimness. The bed is in the dimness, its white cover just visible, its pillows arranged and waiting. The door is in the dimness, its handle just catching the light. The rain against the curtains, present but muffled, a soft and even sound that has become so familiar in the last hour or more that it has stopped being a sound the mind registers as separate and has become simply the texture of the night, the quality of the air, the sound of a wet evening, continuing to be a wet evening in the countryside, outside the old stone walls of a country inn at the end of a narrow lane. Nothing is required, nothing is asked. The fire will tend itself for another hour or two, before it goes entirely to ash. The rain will continue. The lamp will burn until it is switched off, which it will not be yet, not for a while. Not until sleep has come and taken everything with it. The eyes close without effort. The fire breathes. The rain falls. The inn holds its warmth around everything, and the night holds the inn, and the valley holds the night. And somewhere in the wet countryside, a fox moves through the dark fields, and the rain falls on it without distinction. And the lane outside the inn is empty and wet, and the gravel glistens in the lamp above the door, and the car sits in the turning area, with its rain-wet roof and its patient waiting, and inside the inn, everything is warm and quiet and still, and at rest, and the long and sufficient night continues in its dark and gentle way until morning. The rain has eased, not stopped. It will not stop tonight, but eased from the persistent fine rain of the earlier evening into something even gentler, something that is almost not rain at all, a dampness in the air rather than a falling of water, the kind of precipitation that you might stand in for some time before deciding definitively that it is rain. The garden of the inn at this hour is very quiet. The other guests are in their rooms. The proprietor has finished for the evening. The kitchen is dark. The dining room is dark. Only the small lamp above the garden door and the lamps at the corners of the garden wall are still on, throwing their warm orange light across the wet gravel path and the wet grass and the wet leaves of the shrubs that line the garden walls. The garden door opens with a slight resistance. The wood has swollen slightly in the damp, which is the way of old wooden doors in old stone buildings on wet evenings, and then gives, and the cool, damp air of the garden is immediately present, smelling of wet earth and wet stone, and something green and growing and very clean. The gravel of the path is wet and dark beneath the feet. The sound it makes, the soft compression and shift of wet gravel underfoot, is very satisfying in the quiet garden at this hour. The garden is not large, perhaps 20 meters in each direction, surrounded on all sides by the low stone wall that also surrounds the inn, with a gate in the far wall that leads out onto the lane. Within this space there are several beds of shrubs and perennial plants. most of them gone over now, their summer growth finished, their stems dark and bare or holding the last of their leaves in various states of turning, and a central area of lawn that is very green and very wet, the grass slightly long for the season, holding the moisture of the evening in every blade, a stone bench against the far wall, under the overhang of an old apple tree whose branches extend over the bench, and over the wall behind it, the bare branches dividing the dark sky above into irregular shapes. The bench is slightly damp, but not wet. The tree above has kept the worst of the rain off it. Sitting on it, the stone is cold through the coat. Not unpleasantly so, the cold of something that has been outside all evening and is simply being honest about it. From here the inn is visible across the garden, its lit windows warm and yellow in the dark stone face of the building, the lamp above the garden door casting a cone of light down onto the gravel below it. The rest of the building dark and solid and very much itself. It is an old building. This is apparent from the garden in a way that it is perhaps not quite so apparent from inside. The thickness of the walls visible at the windows, the slight irregularity of the roofline, the way the stone has darkened differently in different places, depending on how the weather has reached it over however many centuries it has been standing here. An old building doing what old buildings do, which is to stand and to hold and to offer their interior to whoever needs it, which tonight is you and a small number of other people in their own small rooms, with their own small fires, all of them settled for the evening, none of them in the garden. The dampness in the air settles on the face and hands very gently. Not unpleasantly, just present, just the cool touch of the evening air carrying its moisture. The apple tree above moves very slightly in some barely perceptible current of air, its bare branches shifting through a small range of motion, and then returning to stillness. A drop of water falls from one of the branches onto the gravel, beside the bench with a small, clear sound. Then nothing. Then another drop, from a different branch, further away. The tree releasing its accumulated water in its own time, at its own pace, with complete indifference to any schedule. The smell of the garden at this hour is very specific and very pleasant. Wet earth and wet stone, and the particular smell of plants in the rain, which is green and clean and slightly sweet. The smell of things that are still alive and still doing what they do, regardless of the season or the hour or the weather. Some of the shrubs along the wall are evergreen, and their leaves hold the water in drops that catch the lamplight, in small bright points along the edges of the bed. A rosebush at the corner of the nearest bed still holds a few late roses, dark red, much darker in this light than they would be in daylight, their petals slightly heavy with the moisture, the outermost ones beginning to fall, the innermost ones still held tight. The lane beyond the garden gate is invisible from here, just darkness beyond the gate's iron bars, the lane having no lamp of its own at this point, the light from the garden not reaching far enough to illuminate anything beyond the gate. The countryside beyond the lane is audible rather than visible, the very faint sound of the wind in the trees somewhere in the middle distance, the occasional sound of water running in the ditch that runs along the far side of the lane, and beneath both of these, the general presence of a wet night in a quiet valley, which has its own sound, that is not quite any single thing, but is the sum of many small and quiet things, adding together into something that is very close to silence. A light goes off in one of the upstairs windows of the inn. The room it belonged to goes dark. One of the other guests settling for the night, their lamp switched off, their evening finished. The inn's lit face becomes slightly less lit, slightly more dominated by the dark stone between the remaining windows. Then it settles back into whatever it is, a warm and solid presence at the far end of the garden, doing what inns do on rainy nights, which is to be warm and solid and present and available to whoever needs them. The bench is very still under you. The stone is very cold and very solid. The kind of surface that does not accommodate or adjust, that simply is what it is and lets you make of it what you will. The coat is sufficient against the cold. The dampness in the air continues its very gentle contact with the face and hands. The apple tree above moves its branches through their small range and returns to stillness. The drops continue to fall from the branches at their own intervals. One, then silence, then two in quick succession, then a longer silence, then one more. No pattern, just the tree doing what wet trees do at night when no one is paying particular attention. Another window goes dark, then another a few minutes later, the inn's face becoming more and more dark, more stone and less light, the building returning to something closer, to what it is in the deepest part of the night when everyone is asleep and only the lamp above the garden door and the corner lamps remain, doing their small work of marking the garden's boundaries and illuminating the path. The garden is very still. The air is very damp. The stone bench is very cold. These three facts exist together in the garden at this hour, with complete equanimity, each of them simply what it is, none of them requiring anything. A sound from the countryside beyond the garden wall, the distant bark of a fox, brief and sharp in the wet air, and then gone, absorbed back into the general quiet of the valley. The fox moving through the dark fields somewhere, going about whatever business foxes go about in wet fields at this hour, entirely unaware of the garden and the bench, and the person sitting on it looking at the dark stone face of an old inn in the rain. The drops from the apple tree. One, silence. One, silence. Two together. Silence. The tree working through its inventory of accumulated water at its own unhurried pace. The gravel below receiving each drop with a small, soft sound that is immediately absorbed into the general quiet. The lamplight catching the wet surface of the gravel in small, bright points that shift slightly as the surface settles after each drop, and then return to stillness. The garden is very still. The inn is warm behind its remaining lit windows. The lane beyond the gate is dark. The valley beyond the lane is quiet in the way that valleys are quiet on wet nights. Thoroughly, completely, as if the rain has pressed the sound out of everything, and left only this very gentle and persistent dampness, and the small sounds that belong to it. The cold of the bench is more present now than it was when you first sat down. The stone has been honest about its temperature from the beginning. It was always this cold, but the body has become more aware of it as the time passes. The coat less insulating against the stone than it was. The cold more specifically felt in the places where the stone contacts the body most directly. Not uncomfortable, just very present. Very cold stone on a very cold and wet evening, honestly, and completely itself. Standing eventually, the gravel shifting softly underfoot as the weight transfers back to the feet. The coat settling back into its shape. A last look at the inn across the garden, its remaining lit windows, its dark stone face, the lamp above the garden door making its cone of light on the gravel of the path. Then the path back across the garden to the door. The gravel wet and dark underfoot. The shrubs along the path, dark and wet on either side. The lamp above the door getting closer. The smell of the garden changing slightly as you move through it. Earthier near the beds, more mineral near the path. The smell of wet stone from the wall to the right. The garden door with its slight resistance. The handle cold in the hand. The door giving after a moment. Inside. The warmth of the inn hallway immediate and complete. The smell of it, wood smoke and the last ghosts of the evening's cooking, and the particular warmth of the building, surrounding you immediately and entirely after the cool damp of the garden. The contrast is very pleasant. The feeling of inside after outside on a cold, wet evening, which is one of the most specifically pleasant feelings there is, requiring the outside and the cold and the damp to make the inside and the warmth what they are. The coat is slightly damp on the shoulders. The face is cool. The hands are cold from the stone of the bench and the handle of the garden door. All of this will be warm very soon. The inn will see to it without being asked, simply by being what it is. The stairs creak on every other step going up, as they always do. As they will always do. The building marking your return as it marked your departure, with the same mild and undemanding interest. the landing, the slightly uneven floorboards, the third door on the right, the room. The fire has burned lower while you were in the garden. The logs more consumed, the flames smaller, the coals beneath them deeper and redder and more present. The room is still warm. The lamp on the small table is still on, its warm circle still covering the chair and the table and the space in front of the fireplace. The curtains are still drawn from earlier, the rain behind them still audible, still steady. The coat on the hook behind the door, the hands held near the fire for a moment, not close enough to burn, just close enough to feel the heat moving into the cold fingers, which it does, slowly, the cold retreating from the fingertips inward, the warmth replacing it in the same direction. A very pleasant process, a very specific and simple pleasure. The chair beside the fire receives you again. The cushion accommodates you as before, settling around you. The familiar shape of the chair returning to its familiar relationship with your weight and your shape. The fire in front, lower and quieter than it was, but still present, still warm, still doing its work of making the small room what it is, which is warm and dim and self-contained and entirely sufficient. The window behind the curtains, the rain against the glass, audible now that the room is quiet and you are still, and there is nothing competing with it for attention. Steady and fine, the rain of a long wet night. In the countryside that has settled into its most even and consistent rhythm, the rhythm it will maintain until it stops or until morning, whichever comes first. Behind the curtain, behind the glass, the garden is dark and cold and damp. The bench against the far wall under the apple tree wet, now without the coat on it. The gravel glistening in the lamplight. The shrubs holding their water. The wet night continuing in all the ways that wet nights continue when there is no one in them to observe. The room is very warm. The contrast between the cold garden and the warm room is still present in the body. The fingers returning completely to their normal temperature now. The face warming from the slightly cold and damp thing it was in the garden to the simply warm thing it is beside a fire in a small room. The body registering the warmth with appreciation, with a kind of gratitude that is entirely physical and has nothing to do with thinking about it. The fire breathes. The rain falls. The lamp burns. The inn is very quiet. All the windows that were lit when you went into the garden are dark now. Everyone settled. Everyone in whatever state of sleep or near sleep the evening has brought them to. In their own small rooms with their own small fires and their own drawn curtains and their own rain on their own windows. The coals in the grate are deep orange now, the last of the visible flame gone, just the coals themselves glowing with the steady and patient light of things that are hot and cooling slowly. They will be gray ash by morning, but that is morning, which is a long time away, measured not in hours precisely, but in the length of a night, in the depth of a sleep, in the distance between this warm and quiet now and whatever tomorrow brings, which is nothing that needs thinking about, which is entirely beside the point of this chair, and this fire and this room, and this inn and this wet night. The eyes are heavy, the body is warm and still and entirely at rest in the chair, every part of it having reached its own accommodation with the cushion and the warmth and the quiet and the hour. Nothing left to adjust, nothing requiring attention, the process of settling into the evening complete. The rain against the curtains, the coals in the grate, the lamp on the table, the inn very quiet and very warm around everything, holding the evening in its old stone walls the way it has held every other evening, without effort, without comment, with the patient and reliable warmth of something that has been doing this for a very long time, and will continue doing it long after this particular evening has passed into morning, and then into memory, and then into whatever evenings become, when they are entirely finished. The chair holds you. The room holds the chair. The inn holds the room. The wet valley holds the inn. The night holds the valley. And everything is still and warm and quiet and entirely at rest. The reading room is at the end of the ground floor corridor, past the dining room with its chairs upturned on the tables and its smell of the evening's meal still present in the air, past the small bar that is closed and dark, its bottles just visible in the darkness behind the counter, past the door that leads to the proprietor's private rooms from beneath which no light shows. The reading room door is slightly ajar. A lamp is on inside. The room is small. 2 armchairs facing each other across a low table on which sit a few magazines, and a small vase of dried flowers. A bookshelf along one wall, its shelves not full, perhaps 50 or 60 volumes. A miscellaneous collection accumulated over years from guests who left books behind, and local donations, and the occasional deliberate purchase. The kind of shelf that has no organizing principle beyond the fact that all the books are here and have been here for some time. A window in the far wall, its curtains drawn, the rain audible against the glass behind them. A fireplace in which a fire has been allowed to go to embers for the night. Not tended now, just glowing its low and diminishing orange in the grate, giving the room a warmth that is more residual than active, the warmth of a room that has been heated and is now slowly releasing what it holds. The armchair nearest the fireplace is the right choice. It is slightly more worn than the other one, its upholstery compressed into a shape that suggests long use. Its cushion softened to the point where it offers no resistance. The fabric is a dark green that has faded in the places most exposed to the light, to something closer to gray-green, a softer and more complex color than it started as. Settling into it produces a very slight creak from somewhere in its frame, the sound of something old and well used, acknowledging the new weight placed upon it. And then it is still. The bookshelf is visible from the chair. The spines of the books are of various ages and conditions, some bright and clearly recent, some faded to the point where the titles are difficult to read from here, some paperbacks with creased spines indicating multiple readings, some hardbacks still crisp and straight. Without getting up to look more closely, the general impression is of a collection that has been gathered without plan, and that is more interesting for it. The kind of shelf where you might find anything, where the next book you pull out might be a thriller or a travel memoir, or a natural history, or a novel, in a language you don't read, all of them equally present and equally available and equally patient. The magazines on the low table are months old. A countryside magazine with a photograph of a landscape on its cover, green hills and a pale sky, and a farm in the middle distance. A travel magazine with a photograph of somewhere warm and entirely unlike the wet valley outside. A local listings magazine, its cover featuring news that has long since become history. None of them demanding anything, all of them available if required, and entirely content to remain on the table if not. The embers in the fireplace breathe their slow and diminishing breath. The occasional small collapse of ash from the top of the remaining coal, a sound like a very soft exhalation, and then the orange of the embers visible again, slightly rearranged, continuing. The warmth they give is gentle and even, enough to make the room comfortable without making it hot. The kind of warmth that the body accepts without noticing, that simply becomes the condition of being here. The rain against the window behind the curtains. Its sound is consistent and steady, the fine rain of the late evening having settled into its most even rhythm. No longer varying, just present, a soft and continuous sound, that the curtains muffle slightly, but do not silence. It has been raining for many hours now, and has found its pace, and will maintain it until it stops, which will be sometime in the night. Probably, or perhaps not until morning. It doesn't matter. It is entirely irrelevant to anything happening in this room. The inn is very quiet around the reading room. The other guests are in their rooms, their lights off or dimming. The proprietor is in her private rooms. The kitchen is cold. The dining room is dark. The bar is dark. The corridors are empty, and their lamps are turned down to their lowest setting, just enough light to navigate by, casting a very dim and warm illumination on the flagstone floors, and the dark wood paneling of the walls. The building itself makes occasional small sounds, the creak of a floorboard somewhere above, as a guest turns in their sleep. the very faint sound of a pipe carrying hot water somewhere in the walls, a sound that is more felt than heard, a low and intermittent presence that the building makes to itself in the night, a book from the shelf, standing and running a finger along the spines without looking for anything in particular, stopping at one without reason, a novel, its spine slightly faded, its title just readable in the lamp's light, taking it back to the chair, opening it to the first page and reading the first paragraph slowly, the words going in without particular urgency or attention, just the presence of text on a page in a warm and quiet room at the end of a long evening, which is one of the most pleasant things there is. The reading is slow, not because the book is difficult, but because the room and the hour, and the warmth and the sound of the rain and the low light of the lamp all conspire to make slowness the only available pace. The words go in. The pages turn at intervals that are longer than they would be in other circumstances. The story, whatever it is, unspools at the pace that this room permits, which is a slow and unhurried pace, a pace that belongs to rainy evenings in small reading rooms and country inns rather than to any urgency in the text itself. The embers settle lower as the time passes. Another small collapse of ash, another brief rearrangement of the coals. The orange of what remains slightly less bright than it was when you first sat down. The warmth in the room is still present, the walls having absorbed enough heat during the day, and the earlier part of the evening, that they are still radiating it back, slowly, the room cooling very gradually toward the temperature of the night outside, which will take several more hours to complete, and which the body, settled and warm in the chair, does not yet notice. The lamp on the small table between the chairs is warm on the side of the face. Its shade is slightly faded, its light warm and slightly orange. A narrow circle of illumination that covers the chair, and the low table, and the book in the hands, and very little else. The rest of the room is in a comfortable dimness. The bookshelf just visible, the other armchair a dark shape, the curtained window a slightly paler rectangle in the dark wall. Everything outside the lamp's circle is present but not demanding, existing in the room as fact rather than as sight. The book. The pages are turning more slowly now, not because the story has become less interesting. It is the same story it was 3 pages ago, but because the pace of the reading has slowed further, the attention moving more lightly over the words, taking in their general meaning without pursuing any specific detail. The story continuing somewhere just below the surface of active attention, present and pleasant, but no longer quite the focus. The focus, if there is a focus, has diffused into the room itself, the warmth and the lamp and the embers, and the rain and the quiet of the inn at this hour. All of it equally present, none of it demanding anything. A page turns, then another after a longer interval. Then the book rests open on the lap, the page that was being read still visible. The words still there, but the reading has stopped without any decision being made to stop. The eyes resting on the page without following any line. The hands holding the book loosely without any intention of turning another page. The book remains where it is. The page remains as it is. The room remains as it is. The embers in the grate are very low now. What remains is a bed of coals at their last orange, the surface occasionally brightening when some small movement of air from the chimney reaches them, and then dimming again. A very slow and very quiet pulse. The fire's final rhythm before it goes entirely to ash, which it will do sometime in the night, quietly, and without announcement, the warmth it has given entirely given, the work it was here to do entirely done. The lamp is the only light in the room now that the embers have diminished to almost nothing. Its circle is warm and steady and sufficient. Everything outside its circle is in shadow, but nothing in shadow is troubling. Just the familiar outlines of a small and comfortable room, the other chair, the bookshelf, the curtained window, all of it present and quiet and at rest. The rain behind the curtains continues its steady sound. The inn is very quiet. The corridor outside the reading room is empty, its lamp turned very low. just a faint, warm line under the slightly open door. Somewhere above, very faintly, the sound of the building existing in the night. A pipe, a floorboard, the almost inaudible sound of a very old structure, going about whatever old structures go about in the small hours, which is simply existing, simply being stone and wood and warmth and time. The book rests open on the lap. The hands hold it loosely. The eyes are resting on the page without reading it. The words present but not being followed. The story suspended somewhere between the last thing that was actually read and whatever comes next, which is not being pursued. This is not failure of attention. This is simply the evening having progressed to the point where reading is no longer quite what is happening, where the book is still present and still held, but has become something more like company than content. A warm object in the hands in a warm room, a familiar texture of pages and cover, a presence rather than a text. The lamp holds its warm circle. The embers in the grate are very nearly gone, just the faintest orange at the base of what remains. The surface of the coal mostly gray now. The heat still present but barely. The fire having done what it came to do. And now in the final stage of its diminishment, quiet and unhurried about it, going out the way fires go out in small grates, in small rooms, in old inns, when the evening is very late, and everyone is either asleep or very nearly so. The room has cooled very slightly from what it was an hour ago. Just perceptibly, not uncomfortable, not enough to require anything, just the faint suggestion of the night outside the walls making itself known through the stone and the mortar. The warmth the room has been holding, slowly moving toward equilibrium, with the temperature beyond the building. The body in the chair does not register this as cold, just as slightly less warm than before, which is still warm, which is still entirely comfortable. The chair is very comfortable. This has been true since you sat down in it, and remains true now, in the way that good chairs maintain their quality of comfort as the time passes, rather than revealing some hidden discomfort that the first minutes concealed. The cushion is completely accommodating. The back of the chair is at exactly the right angle. The arms are at exactly the right height. The chair was here before you arrived, and will be here after you leave, and has been comfortable for whoever sat in it, and will continue to be comfortable for whoever sits in it in the future, which is the only kind of comfort worth having. The rain, behind the curtains, against the glass. The rain continues its fine and steady falling. It has been falling since early afternoon and will continue until sometime in the night, or until morning, whichever the weather determines. And the inn receives it without comment, its stone walls dark and wet outside and warm and dry inside. The two conditions separated by the thickness of the walls and the competence of the construction, both of which have been demonstrated for however many centuries. The building has been standing here, receiving whatever weather the valley provides. The corridor outside the reading room, just visible through the slightly open door. A very dim, warm light, the lowest setting of the corridor lamp, just enough to show the floor and the walls, and nothing else. Empty. The inn at this hour is entirely still. The building's small night sounds, the pipe, the floorboard, having ceased or become so infrequent as to be functionally absent. Just the rain, just the very faint sound of the building existing, just the lamp, just the almost gone embers, just the room. The book slides slightly on the lap. The hands adjust to hold it without opening the eyes to look, finding it by feel, the familiar weight of it, the texture of the cover, settling it back into a comfortable position, without fully waking to do so, the body managing this small task with the competence of something that is nearly asleep and knows what it is doing, regardless. The lamp, its warm circle, the faded shade, the light within the circle and the comfortable dimness beyond it, the chair within the circle and the rest of the room in its comfortable dimness, the bookshelf and the other chair, and the curtained window, all present and quiet and entirely at rest. The rain. The embers, the very last of them, giving their last faint orange, and then going gray and dark and cold. The grate empty now of everything but ash. The fire entirely finished, its warmth entirely given. The room now held entirely by its own accumulated heat and the lamp and the building and the night. The breath is slow. The body is entirely still in the chair. The book is held loosely in the hands. The lamp burns its warm circle. The inn is quiet in every direction. The rain falls on the garden and the lane and the countryside, and the wet roof of the building, and on everything, softly and steadily and without pause. The rain of a long night in a quiet valley. The rain of a night that has been going on since afternoon and will continue until it stops. Which does not matter. Which is entirely beside the point of this room, and this chair, and this lamp, and this warm and quiet and entirely sufficient inn. The reading room holds its quiet. The lamp holds its light. The inn holds its warmth. The night holds the inn, and everything is still, and everything is at rest, and there is nothing left to do, and nowhere left to be, and the book is in the hands, and the chair is holding you, and the rain is falling, and the inn is warm, and the night is long and dark and gentle and entirely, completely, peacefully sufficient. That's all for tonight at the Nodding Hour. If these stories helped you rest, subscribe so you never miss a new one. Sleep well. We'll see you next time.